And to tell you, every time Earth Day comes up and we prepare for it in worship, I always get so uncomfortable because I go out and I read a lot of these liturgies and these prayers and these actions that churches can do, and there's a lot of stuff out there. And some of it's really good. Earth Ministry, the local nonprofit that does this work to support churches in their work to become greener congregations. But I gotta tell you guys, Earth Day is the most opportune time for profound self-righteousness I have seen ever. Talk about public self-aggrandizement about all the great stuff that I do that you don't do. Talk about how green I am. Oh man, it kills me. I remember one time I was working at this church and this family was like, you know, we're a zero waste family. And I was like, oh really? Tell me about that. But they were saying that in the context of a Halloween carnival in which they wouldn't let their kids have candy because it came in plastic wrappers and that stuff doesn't get to come in their house. And I was like, oh, do you think the clothes? No, I didn't go there. I said, oh, well, I have a donut in a box that doesn't come in a wrapper. Can I give that to your kid? And they said, oh yeah, sure, that's fine. And I was like, cool. But I didn't go there, but I just thought, you know, on the one hand, I thought, God, you must be insufferable. But then the other part I thought was like, how insane a standard to keep for yourself. Think about how small your life becomes. Just like think for a minute about not putting any trash in your trash can. I mean, like, sure, like, kingdom of heaven goals, right? But like, just think about the practicality of trying to do that. And maybe that's the point. Maybe that's the point, is to recognize that we don't think about it all that often. How often we take out the trash and what's in it, and how long that stuff's going to be there. And maybe when we go to the store, we don't really think about, you know, this one isn't wrapped in this, and this one is. Is that part of my decision-making process? And good on them for inviting me to think about that. But that strict all-or-nothing lifestyle seems suffocating and impossible and set up to fail. And there is nothing that a domination system wants more than for you to try really hard at an all-or-nothing system to make the world better and fail at it. That is absolutely 100% what the domination systems of patriarchy and white supremacy and heterosexism and capitalism want you to do. They want you to try really hard at an all-or-nothing system for you to be good and fail so that you will stop trying. And I sometimes find Earth Day problematic in inviting us into some more of this all-or-nothing thinking. I was at an organizing meeting yesterday, and I was at another one a week ago, and the leader was talking about effectiveness. What if we move to thinking about our actions in terms of their effectiveness? And he invited all the participants to break up into small groups and talk about a time when they felt that they had been effective for change. And I'm uncomfortable with the concept of effectiveness because I think that effectiveness is contextual, right? It's effective in terms of what? What's our objective? What are we trying to accomplish? And so often in movement work, our objectives are like social transformation, right? They're like ending misogyny. They're like creating a sustainable civilization. And I'm just like, okay, how are you going to be effective at doing that, right? I think part of the problem is our goal setting. What are we trying to accomplish? I think maybe we don't have that conversation enough. What are we trying to make happen? And more than that, I think when we talk about effectiveness, instead of talking about our own self being effective at changing the world. Organizing talks about how are we effective at building power. You guys talked about relationships, right? Relationships are power. Think about the ways that the world has changed since you were a kid in terms of how we relate to the environment, how we think about our cars, how we think about our consumption. A lot of that has changed. I mean, this is where the pro-capitalists get all of their ideas, is they say, well, the market will drive everything, right? As if the market has some self-corrective, but what is the market? The market is us, who collectively say, you know what, we actually want an environmental protection agency. That seems like a good thing, and like a Clean Air Act and a Clean Water Act, and like regulation on businesses, and like caps on pollution. Those seem like good things, but those came into being in the lifetime of most of you. After Earth Day, in fact. Earth Day was in fact the push, the political movement to start making some of these things that we all agreed needed to happen. I think sometimes we have this historical amnesia about where we've been and where we are now. Sometimes we look at the world and all we can see is everything that's broken and messed up, instead of recognizing, like, oh my God, this same like nightmare apocalypse America, that rhetoric has been used over and over and over and over again. Think about the world of 1970. On top of all of the other environmental stuff that I've just been talking about, you've got literal political assassinations by the FBI against movement leaders. Imagine that being a thing happening today. Right? Like, you've got whole cities on fire. Right? Now it's like a block, a few stores. It's an uprising that lasts a couple. We're talking weeks of destruction. Like, some of y'all were politically aware. I wasn't even born, but some of y'all were politically aware during this time. You remember how terrifying it was? Detroit, I mean, we could go on and on and on. Yeah. I mean, things have really changed. But I don't think they've changed because we got more information. Silent Spring was written in 1962. And it wasn't just because we got facts and figures and information. It's because we started to notice that, like, oh wow, it's pretty normal for it to be smoggy in our cities. And for it to be hard to breathe and not able to see. Like, I've adjusted to that now. I don't want to. That's not the world I want to live in. Do you want to live in that world? Do you? Oh, we don't want to live in that world. You think about this story about Jesus, and I love this story about Jesus because it really makes this point that all the theology in the world, all the great information, all the analysis, all the scripture, all of your love, prophets and words and speaking truth to power and all that stuff, they still don't recognize him. What if that's not how we recognize him? What if it has to be personal? What if it has to be embodied? What if it has to be connective? What if it has to be communal? You know, one of the other funny things about Earth Day is I talk to people all the time and they say, you know, I encounter God on the trail so much more often than I encounter God in church. And I say, well, yeah, the church is made by people. Look around. You're going to see human stuff. Even these creations and these creations are in little boxes. Like, thank God we bring some of God's incredible fecundity and growth into this space, but it's in a little tiny box because we don't want mold to start growing in the carpet. You know what I mean? Like, God is that germ seed of chaos, right? That like creates new things that are not in our control. And that freaks us out. And it makes us sick. I mean, black mold's a real thing. But, you know, like, I get it. We want to go on a walk. We want to go encounter a tree and a leaf. We want to have that kind of thing that other people get uncomfortable. Like, oh, is something wrong with you because you're just sitting there looking at your hands for 10 minutes, right? But it's because you're witnessing. Just take a look at your hands. I'm not kidding. Just take a look at your hands and think about how you've had them your whole life. And the skin on them is only like 2 weeks old. Like all the muscles in your hands and bones are new within the past 15 years. That's amazing, right? We should be geeking out on creation all the time. So why do we come to church? I don't think we meet God in church necessarily. I think there's something about being together where we witness to the world that we want to live in. We encounter each other, each other's ideas and thoughts and opinions and perspectives on reality, and they help us see more of God. I don't think I see God more than any of the rest of you. I just think that I talk about it all the time. I think that's probably the biggest difference. You know, Earth Day was actually inspired by the student anti-war movement. That's actually what inspired the movement for Earth Day. They were looking around and they were seeing all these young people activated and mobilized for articulating the world they wanted to live in. Because you also need to remember that in 1970, the United States was engaged on multiple fronts in clandestine military operations around the world. We were enforcing democracy by assassinating leaders and training up juntas and militias in various countries throughout Central America so that we could secure what? Resources. We were literally engaged in a trade of cocaine for guns to get across oceans in order to get access, political and economic access to resources. I mean, if you think things are nuts now, we are not participating in the flow of history to see just how crazy things have been. Things have changed so much. Like I said, even the fact that we can name greenwashing as a thing or rainbow washing as a thing means that we have a collective level of analysis that's very different than it's ever been before. We also have a collective level of cynicism that is encouraged by these supremacy systems. They want us to think that it's broken. They want us to think that's unfixable. They want you to think that it's your job to fix it, and if you don't, then you have failed. And if you have high values and beliefs, if you think the world should be different and you're not making it different, then you're fucking it up. Then you're the problem. Then you should just go sit on the sidelines. Why do we put altruism on the banner of empire? Because it's a lie. For those of you that don't know, there's two banners of March of Men of Holy Week, and altruism is on the banner of empire, not on the banner of Christ. Because it's a lie. This imagine that you could be perfect and pure and clean and have only good intentions and only do it because of your love of humanity. I mean, that's not how we live. It's got to be personal to us. He's got to break bread in front of us, with us, and hand it to us. It's got to be about my body. It's got to be about our body. That's why we come to church. I don't really care if you don't encounter God in here. I want you to encounter other bodies. I want you to learn to love on some bodies, including your own body. I want you to sing, even if you sound like me. If you feel like I don't want you to dance a little bit, I want you to remember that you have joints that don't always ache. I want you to remember that you have knees that don't always hurt. I want you to remember that you have a heart. I think the real problem The real problem is that the life that we live is often not life-giving. The life that we live and the life that we often pursue is not often life-giving. We've been taught to hustle. It's a play. We're getting hustled. And what has it produced for us? More hustle. It's a pie eating contest, and guess what the prize is? More pie. Great. We have to break the cycle of all or nothing thinking. We have to break the cycle of separation and isolation. We have to break these belief systems that say, I should be able to be self-sufficient and do it on my own, and if I can't, somehow I have failed. I want a bunch of people in this church that know that they cannot do it on their own. I want to be around a bunch of people that know that they are messing it up and incomplete, and we cannot stand to lie to ourselves anymore. Because then maybe we could actually be the thing that Jesus was intending for us to be, which is a real community that can share a vision of this God on whom we depend. When we go out into the world and we see those beautiful things, we encounter those beautiful, living, life-giving things, we remember that we need to receive that life. We need to take it into our actual bodies. We need to be doing things that make us just a little bit more free. We need to be pursuing things that put us a little bit more at ease. There's a great word in Greek. We need to become those people that invite more prautes, often translated meekness, but it actually means gentle strength of divine origin. Gentle strength of divine origin. What are the things in your life right now that are giving you that quiet, calm, centered knowing that you're beloved, that this is beautiful, and that we are going to make it? We're going to make something better. We're going to make something more growthful. We're going to make something more honest. The Jesus movement is all about personal relationships. A personal relationship with God. He called God Daddy because he wanted us to remember. I think he did it on purpose. You know, you don't need to pray out loud, but I think he did it on purpose so that we would see, like, oh, wow, that's a level of intimacy I don't even have with my own dad. The Father, right? He called God Daddy. He wanted to preserve that childhood dependence, that innocence, that connection. And Christianity is also about personal relationships between each other. How are we really getting to see and know one another? Not just our infirmities and our afflictions and all the things that are sad and broken and wrong in the world, but like, what brings you alive? Look around the room for a minute. Just look around the room for a minute. Look at these people. Look at these beautiful people in the world. And I know some of you don't know a lot of these people very well, and some of you know most of these people pretty well. I want you to think about what you know about people and remember to think about them in terms of what brings them alive. What could you ask them a question about that you get a 15-minute response to? What if we knew people that way? Because that's how he knew us. That's how he knew his disciples. He knew that if he broke bread and he gave it to them, he would see them and he would invite that recognition, that relationship. I think the thing we need most on Earth Day is the thing that Howard Thurman talks about. He says, don't try to do what the world needs. Figure out what brings you most fully alive and do that, because the thing the world needs most is more people fully alive. Hit the next slide for me. So we were thinking about how do we create ritual for this? We think about how do we invite something that feels real. We talked about the power of symbol and ritual a couple weeks ago. And we decided there was something about that living water. something about that need for refreshment. Does anybody remember what percentage of your body is water? 70. Babies, 85%. And they say water has memory. I think that seems a little woo-woo to me, but there's a lot of people who say it, and some of them have degrees behind their names, so they're inviting me to believe them. I understand that. But what if it's true? What if the water in your body that's been in the clouds, that's been in the rain, that's been in the rivers, that's been in the oceans, that's existed for millennia, that's existed since the time that the earth was young, the things that you are made of, what if it remembers all of that? And these limitations and these fears that we have about the future of humanity, what if they're a distraction a little bit? What if they're trying to get us caught up in that all or nothing thinking, get us caught up in that separation, get us caught up in that it's your responsibility? What if we were part of that flow? What would that mean to you? So I invite you to come up. Sam's going to play us a beautiful piece of music by Eric Whitaker. And while he does, I invite you as slowly or as quickly as you want. If you don't want to, that's totally fine too. So just come up and just interact with this bowl of water a little bit, however you feel good. You want to bless yourself if you've got a Catholic background and that feels good to you, that feels like it's part of your body inhabiting this world, great. If you just want to get your hands in it, you just want to dip your finger, whatever you want. But I invite you to remember to honor the waters around us and to honor the waters inside of us and to receive the refreshment of God.